Guys, is God moments, right? We've got this common phrase. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, especially on Sundays, we get together and I say, hey, what's God been doing this week, right? What's God been doing recently? And what I've been wanting to do is I've been wanting you guys to get used to going throughout your normal day, right? And seeing different things that God is up to. Because if there's one thing I can tell you about our God, He's not lazy. He doesn't sit around and just not do things. So we either recognize what He's doing around us, we can see what He's doing, or we don't see what He's doing. It's not that, God, where are you? Why are you not doing anything? It's just we can't see it, okay? And that's not anything on His side, okay? He's always doing things really visible around us. Simple things like, man, I can't find my headphones, right? And then all of a sudden you're looking, and you're like, oh man, here they are, they're in Dylan's bag, right? And you made a slight comment, right? You're like, man, the Lord was looking out. But I'm telling you guys, He's constantly doing little things and big things where He gets our attention. And if you think they're just coincidences, man, I can tell you again, man, there is an awesome God that's orchestrating things. He's always showing His face. He's not showing His face, He's showing His hand at work. All right, He's saying, hey, look, I'm here. Romans talks about, you look at it in creation, it's very easy to see that there is an all-powerful God that exists. Because you look at everything, you look at your body, you look at your hand, you're like, there's no way just random numbers come together and, and different formulas and this and that, and chemistry and science come together just randomly to make a perfectly symmetrical, functional, efficient hand, right? We got an opposable thumb, all this stuff. That's not coincidence. That's not random. So even you look out everywhere, and there's evidence everywhere that you see. You can just look in the mirror, and God's at work, okay? The fact that you can breathe right now is borrowed oxygen. Yeah, we say, thank you, Lord, for that breath, man. Because it says that in Him, everything holds together. We live, we move, and we have our being because of Him. So He's always at work. So these are these God moments, right? And then sometimes we have big ones where we're like, dude, I was in a really scary situation, right? I know we've heard some similar ones recently where we were like, I was in. I couldn't do anything about it. And I knew that in that moment, God was my only hope. And then He came through and I was able to see God do something that is inexplainable to anything but God. So we've got little things. Scott has them all the time where he's like, man, I can't find this. He's like, oh, you know what? I just pray about it. Because God even cares about the little things. Right? I know you guys do too. So we're going to talk about God moments tonight. I want to ask some questions, and then I want to look in this passage to find answers. And what you guys are going to do is you guys are going to be the one finding answers with me too, okay? Why am I out of breath? Man, Josh, you wore me out. You were on my team. I said, you wore me out. So, I have a question for you. And I want to hear some answers. Why does God reveal Himself through these God moments? So you can see that He's there. Yeah, that's sweet. That's a good answer. Why else? Why does God do these God moments? Why does He reveal Himself? Right? It builds your faith. Yeah? What else? Yeah, right? You got a sweet story. You're like, go to your friend. You're like, dude, check this out. This happened. Didn't know what to do. Boom, out of nowhere. God moved. Check this story out. It's a cool story. It's a testimony to others, right? What else can you think of? Why does God... An appearance, but different kind? Sure, right? Because God, we can't see Him right now, right? But He is definitely here, right? It says God is spirit. We can see His effects everywhere, just like the wind, right? You can't see the wind, but you can see the effects of the wind. I guarantee you people in Florida and Houston saw the effect of the wind. No, I'm being serious. That's scary, right? They couldn't see where it's coming from, but they definitely saw the effect. It's just like God. You can't see Him, but you can definitely know He's there, right? Okay, so those are good. So what I want to talk about tonight is I want to answer that question, why does God reveal himself through these God moments? I want to look at the reasons why he does this, and I want to look at the results. What should happen because of this? Does that make sense? So I'm going to try and systematically break this down. We're going to start with the reasons, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I want you guys to follow along in this passage, all right? So this is where Deuteronomy 4 comes in, okay? So to give you a little backstory of where we're coming at in this story is for the first 3 chapters of Deuteronomy, Moses has been recounting all the different things that God has been doing to Israel. And he's been reflecting back saying, hey, these are the things God has done, and these are the areas that you've obeyed really well. These are the areas that, man, you guys missed it big time. And then he brings in, but God has stayed faithful even through your screw-ups and stayed true to his covenant, right? His promise that he made to Israel years ago, to their father, we call him, right? Father Abraham, okay? He made a promise with Abraham. These are all his kids. Hundreds of years later, he's still keeping his promise with them, even though they're screwing up. So he's recounting all of these God moments. And then, boom, we come to this section, and he takes it back even further. He's like, let me remind you of the God moments you remember when you were in Egypt? Slaves, doing nothing but making brick? Yeah, let me remind you of this. So that's where we come into this story, okay? So this first section is Moses is talking about God moments, and then let's answer these questions in this passage of Scripture here. So follow along, okay? So Deuteronomy 4, verse 32, and I'm going to go all the way through 40, okay? So this is Moses talking. For ask now of the days that are past, which were before you, right in front of your eyes, since the day that God created man on this earth, and ask from one end of heaven to the other whether such great things as this has ever happened or was ever heard of. Did any people ever hear that the voice of God speaking out in the midst of fire, as you have heard, and you're still alive? Or has any God ever attempted to go and take a nation for himself right in the middle of another nation? By trials, by signs, by wonders, by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great deeds of terror, all of which the Lord your God did for you in Egypt right before your eyes. To you it was shown that you might know that the Lord is God and there is no other besides him. Out of heaven he let you hear his voice, that he might discipline you. And on earth he let you see his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers and chose their offspring or their kids after them, and brought you out of Egypt, out of slavery, with his own presence and by his great power, driving out before you nations that were greater and mightier than you, to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. Know, therefore, today, and lay it to your heart, that the Lord is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. There is no other. Therefore, you shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Now, that's a cool passage. What we're going to do is we're going to unpack this, okay? So, we're going to talk about 2 reasons God reveals himself through God moments, okay? Reason number 1 is for his glory, okay? Actually, before we do that, some people start saying out to me, what are the different God moments God did in the first part of this, from 32 to 34? Look in there. What are some of the God moments Moses is reminding them of?
Take them out of slavery?
Yeah. Yup. Is that a small thing? No.
Since the day that God created man on earth.
What's that?
Since the day God created man on earth.
Yeah, he kind of leads with that, right? He says, since the beginning God created man, has anything happened like this that's been this big? Moses is trying to give us a unspoken no. There's nothing that's happened that's even come close to this God moment. What else is God doing? What are some God moments?
It says from heaven he made you hear his voice to discipline you.
Right? You guys ever heard God audibly? You ever heard a voice from heaven talk to you? From what? Your mom and your conscience? Have you ever heard an audible?
Mind.
Oh, your mind. Yeah, right. He speaks to us in our mind, right? But have you ever heard him speak audibly, like I'm talking to you right now? He's like, has any other people ever experienced God talking to them audibly? There's that unspoken answer. He's like, from the beginning of man, right? Nothing that has ever happened like this. What else did God do? Some God moments.
I was actually going to share a story real fast, if that's okay. It's a God moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was actually one time I was in my room and I was like, I'm going to read my Bible. So I was reading my Bible and before I read my Bible, I started praying. I was like, God, I want to know more of you. Like, can you just show me the Bible first to help me learn about you? So I just sat there in silence and then I forgot what Bible verse it was, but it came to my head and I opened to it. And the beginning of the chapter said, knowing God. So I was like, whoa. And it's happened like twice. So.
Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of like what Isaiah was talking about. He kind of prompts you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, we're going to talk about that later, how God speaks to us like that. So what else are some God moments you see? Can you recount as well the story that he's referring to? Primarily look in 34. When it talks about signs and wonders, what is he maybe referring to? Yeah, right? God brought some serious judgments and some signs on Egypt, right? Proving that he was the one true living God, right? All the Nile turning into blood and all the other water turning into blood, bringing the frogs, the flies, eating everything, the locust that was tearing apart their harvest. I mean, God was like doing some serious judgments on Egypt and saying, hey, I'm actually doing this to prove to you, hey, let my people go, right? I'm calling them out. I'm going to deliver them from slavery one way or another. And if you want to keep playing this rejection game with me, that's fine. But we're going to get to a point where you can't play any longer, and I want to prove to you that I am the one true living God. So all these God moments Moses is recounting, and the first reason why God does God moments, right? And this is in your life too today, it's true for your life, is for his glory. Okay? Look at verse 35 with me. All right, find verse 35. To you it was shown that you might know that the Lord is God and there is no other besides him. I'm going to tell you right now, there's an earlier section right in this chapter where God says, hey, don't you make any other idols or don't you try and make any carved images that you think might identify with me. He says, because I am uncreated and you cannot create anything that identifies itself that looks like me. He said, I am a jealous God and I will not give my glory to any other. Right? So this is God saying, I want you to know that I am it. Okay? I am the one true living God, and besides me, there is no other. So it's for his glory. And you've heard me ask this all the time. Why does God do anything that he does? Number one answer is for his glory, right? To show that there is nothing else besides him. He is the one true, powerful creator of everything. So, he is not made. I love this. He is the eternal, uncreated creator of all things. That's my God. And I hope that's your God too. There is none other besides him, because he is zealous and jealous to show his glory off to the whole world. Any other God, that's not worth my time. Can I just say that? Man, any God of pride or reputation or Buddha that's dead or any other God that you can place on the throne, that's not worth my time. The God that created everything and then is saying, hey, I'm it. Everything else you're going to be unsatisfied with. You can try it. You can chase it. But I'm going to tell you, you're not going to find any satisfaction in any of this other stuff. I am the one true creator of all things. And if you want to know the purpose of life, you find it inside of me. That's a God worth my time. That's a God worth my time right now for me to talk about with you guys. Anything else, I'd be like, let's just play basketball, eat pizza, and go home. Right? No, because we get to the good stuff up in here. This is the stuff that satisfies the soul when you meet that God. Man, that's worth my time. So God reveals himself to his people, and he does God moments for his glory. Okay? That's number one. Now, number two, why does God reveal himself through God moments? It's to lead us into his perfect will. Okay? Now let's explain that. Follow at verse 38. Okay? Go to verse 38. He says, he did all this, and he drove out nations much greater and mightier than you to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. Okay? So God does things in our life to lead us to what he desires. Does that make sense to anyone? God does these things to lead us and point us to where he wants us to be. And where he desires is best. So flip back a couple of pages now with me. Go to Deuteronomy 1, okay, chapter 1. And we're going to break down what does it look like. What is he talking about? He's going to lead you into this land. What is he talking about, this inheritance? What does that mean he's going to lead you into the promised land, right? All this stuff is symbolic in this Old Testament and applies to us today. So, Deuteronomy 1, Scott, why don't you read verse 21 and then skip down and read verse 25, okay? So, Deuteronomy 1, and I want you to read it in here so everyone can hear you and follow along. 21 and then go down to 25.
See, the Lord your God has given you the land. Go up and take possession of it as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, told you. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Taking with them some of the fruit of the land, they brought it down to us and reported, it is a good land the Lord our God has given us.
Yeah, that's cool. So this whole time, God brought them out of slavery, right? Brought them out of Egypt. Now what? He just took them out of slavery and put them in the desert just to die? No. That's what they thought he was doing. They were getting tired of God. They're like, God, this is what they said. They said, are you just bringing us out here to die in the wilderness? And God was like, let me remind you of who I am, and that when I make a promise to your fathers, and I told your fathers, your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, that I was going to give you an inheritance. I was going to take you to a land that I'm calling the promised land because I promised it. Let me tell you something. I'll get you there. So God is now saying, hey, I've got a land. I've got an inheritance that I'm leading you to. I did all of these mighty deeds, all of these awesome wonders so that you could see and trust me that, hey, I'm going to get you there. And I love this. Look at verse 25. What was this inheritance? What was this land like? What was the report? Verse 25. Huh? It was good. The land produced good fruit too, right? Dude, this was a land that you wanted to be in. This was a land that God was like, I'm telling you, it's going to be way better than Egypt. So I'm telling you right now, God does these God moments in your life and my life because he's leading us into his perfect will, into his land, into his inheritance. He's like, I've got somewhere I want you to go, and I'm doing all these things so that you see I exist because I'm taking you somewhere. He doesn't just do all these God moments so he's like, hey, that was pretty cool, huh? Check that out, Josh. Hey, Taylor, you want to see this? No, there's a purpose, right? He's leading you somewhere. And I want you to see that this promised land that he's leading you to is symbolic of what he desires for your life, his perfect will for your life. And I'm going to tell you something. The report was that it was good. And I know there's some of you sitting out there, you're like, Craig, my life does not look good right now. So I don't want to hear you say that the situation that I'm in right now, and I don't see God doing anything anywhere, and you're going to stand up there and tell me he's got something good he's leading me to? Yes. That's exactly what I'm going to tell you. Because right here, the people thought he had abandoned them too in the wilderness. And he was like, I made a promise. And I'm a promise keeper. And I'm telling you, you might not be able to see that this is good, but my perfect will includes trials and battles. And I love it, it says there was much fruit. Now, in Christianese, in churchy language, when we say that we bear fruit or a life that produces fruit or whatever, we're not talking about like bananas and oranges and stuff. We're talking about like when we're right in the center of God's will where he wants us to be, our life produces good fruit. What that means is it produces evidence that God is at work. The fruit that he's talking about is you can see the evidence that I am right in the middle of God's will because there is all kinds of God moments happening. So this land is good. It produces good things, good fruit. And I've got a question for you. They eventually made it to the promised land. Good news, right? They eventually made it. The generation before them didn't make it because they were so set on disbelieving God. God was like, okay, you want to be that set on disbelieving me? He's like, you are not going to enter this. And it says later, Paul was like, hey, that was an example to us. Don't live like those people in the wilderness. Trust God, even in the middle of the wilderness, that he's leading you to the promised land. So they eventually got to the promised land. Was everything just hunky-dory once they got into the promised land? No. What still happened in the promised land? Did other nations still try and wage war against them? Yeah, right? There were still other people that were like, no, we don't like these guys. Yeah, there was all kinds of stuff, inner turmoil and all this stuff. There were battles that were happening. There was wars that were happening against them. But we get to see awesome testimonies that even when wars were happening, that's when God was able to flex his mighty right arm a little bit and say, hey, watch this. Even though you're smack dab in the middle of where I want you to be, there's going to be some hard things that come, but that's part of my plan. I want hard things because hard things give me glory because you get to see how I work through them. Does that make sense to anyone else? Yeah. Whenever the Israelites came out, they left Egypt and they went to the place where they were stuck in a corner and all they had was the Red Sea and the Egyptian army behind them. That's a bad spot to be in. You can't go anywhere. You've got the world's greatest superpower army right on your tail saying, Pharaoh saying, destroy all of them. And they're like, And then God's like, hey, watch this. Hey, Moses, stick out your staff. Moses is like, dude, God, you've proven yourself over and over again. Okay. Does this. Huge wind comes from the east, blows the Red Sea in two, and it's dry land that they walk across. 1 million people walk across dry land to the other side, and Egypt is going, what? And God is saying, put me in a tough spot. Put me in a tough spot. And watch my glory be revealed to you. And Egypt is like, go get them. They're like, they're coming down. They're like, Israel's like, and they're like, and they're like, whoa. And then they get right in the middle of the Red Sea, and God goes, whew, and just demolishes their enemies. And I'm telling you right now, that is a picture still today that God looks after his people. You say, God, how can I get out of this? He says, watch my glory. And he makes a way and demolishes his enemies because God does not stand for wickedness, unrighteousness, all these things. He backs his people because he says, I want you guys to see, I am the one true living God. So he's leading us into a promise, and he's leading you guys as he's showing himself to you in these God moments. Follow him. Let him take you to his perfect will. And it will still include battles and struggles, but it also will include then deliverances and victories and glory of God. That's my God. That's my God right there. So, second reason God does God moments in our lives is because he's leading us to a good place. Okay? So now let's go to the results. All right? So I got a question. What should happen then after God reveals himself to us? What should happen after God does these cool God moments? Number one, guys, it should draw us closer to him. Number one, it should draw us closer to God. Check out verse 39. Go to verse 39 with me. Guys, I love this. This passage of Scripture has all the answers for us. Verse 39. It says, know therefore today, and I love this, lay it to your heart that the Lord is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. There is no other. So guys, seeing God at work in your everyday life should make you want to further a relationship with this Almighty God. Right? If you guys see God at work all the time in your life and you're just thinking, thanks God for that little tip, and it doesn't do anything within you, that's like, dude, this God might be worth my time a little bit. And if you feel this inner beckoning, like, dude, I'm kind of curious. He doesn't leave me alone. He keeps trying to like show me things, and he keeps doing things in my life. He keeps bringing people in my life that are saying these certain things. It's not for nothing. The result of that is it should do something that should draw us closer to him. Look at this. I love how it says in verse 39, it says, know therefore. Lay it in your heart. What was it we talked about weeks ago? Knowing God. Right? Remember we talked about this, the purpose? The purpose of life. You guys want to know the answer? It's to know God and to enjoy him forever. You want to know the origin of all things. You want to know where everything came from. You want to know where everything began. It all began in God. And if you want to know that God, you'll start getting true wisdom. You'll start living true life. You want to live a true life? Then you need to know and experience true life himself. He's got a name. True life has a name, and it's Jesus Christ. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the what? The life. You want to live true life? Let true life live in you. It says, no, God, lay it in your heart, man. It's like, settle it down. Let your heart rest assured on this truth that I know God. You know what's cool about this section where it says, know me? He's saying, know it in your heart. You know what's cool about this section? He's showing how relational he is. Guys, look at any other religion. Is Muhammad still alive? No. Is Confucius alive? Is the Buddha alive? Is it hard to know them personally if they're dead? Yeah, right? And God, the eternal God, who does not change, is saying, hey, guess what? I can be known. Isn't that good news? That the maker of all things is like, you know what? I don't want to just sit up here and like be the almighty creator. I want people to know me. And not only that, I want to know them. Guys, I don't know if you reckon yet inside of yourself how good of news that is, but as you get older and older and you start to see life for what it is, you start to realize, you know what? It might be a good thing to know the one that's got all the power in his back pocket. It might be worth my time to know the one that created all of this. And to get to know him, that brings a whole different perspective on this life. And then the other promise he gives us that we can know him forever. That is a good God. No other guy that started another religion was like, I want everyone to know me. He was like, no, I want you guys to follow all these rules because then you can just become the best you can be and it can satisfy this some like mysterious cosmic being that's mad at you all the time. Right? And if you go into a really busy place and strap a bomb to yourself and blow yourself up, that's what brings glory to me. Go kill a bunch of other people, right? So that you can just have like, you know, so many virgins whenever you die. Right? But you can't know me personally. You just don't want me to be mad at you. That doesn't sound like a God that I would actually want to know personally. Right? And you don't hear this as hate speech. You need to hear this as love speech. Okay? Because if someone has an answer to a very important question and doesn't tell you, that's not very good of that person that's got the right answer. And I'm here today telling you there is one God and there is no other. And I'm here to tell you he can be known and wants to know you. That is amazing. So these God moments that he's doing should draw us closer to God. I like this little section here. I put a little conversation between you and me that you haven't even had with me yet. So you might ask, Craig, sounds great and all, but how do you get to know God? And I will respond to your question. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. Now I'm going to ask you a question. How do you get to know anybody? Talking to them? Say hi? Be in their presence, right? Because you can't say hi to someone unless you're like with them. Well, I guess technology, you can like call them on the phone, right? How else do you get to know anybody? Spend time with them. It would be really hard for me to get to know my wife if I didn't spend any time with her. Hey, you look pretty hot. You want to get married? Yeah, sure.